tenant, you could be on the hook for your landlord's taxes. That's what happened to one renter in Montreal who was recently hit with a surprise bill for 6 years worth of charges. The story is shedding light on a largely unknown section of the Income Tax Act. So with us this morning to discuss is Ron Usher, a real estate lawyer and tax expert. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So just to set this up for everybody, in this case, the Canada Revenue Agency is now billing this tenant for 25% of every rent payment that they made over a 6-year period, along with compounded interest and penalties on top of it. How does something like this happen? How does the tenant end up responsible for the landlord's taxes?
That's a good question. And first of all, I'd like to emphasize that the law here is very old. This is from the 30s. So this is not a new thing at all. This is, what it highlights, though, is the difficulty CRA has in collecting taxes from people who essentially are invisible to our tax system. And so in this particular case, and how do you collect taxes from people who are not residents of Canada and have no tax number, for example? So law is always required that they remit, if you're a foreign, when you sell, this is commonly dealt with by lawyers and notaries across the country. When they sell, there are procedures in place. Everyone knows how to collect any taxes that might be owing on, for example, capital gains. What's more obscure is the requirement that those foreign landlords remit 25% of their rent every month to CRA. But of course, I think many people don't even know this is a problem. The Act then goes on to say that if you're someone paying rent to them, you're entitled to deduct 25% of the month rent every month and remit it to CRA. So what happened in this case, this fellow in Montreal, as a result of various tax audits, it was discovered that he was paying money. They discovered that the landlord he was paying had become a non-resident of Canada during the time he was a tenant, rather. And so they went after him, and it ended up with a $45,000 plus bill to the tenant.
This seems so unfair. If you receive a bill like this and you didn't know you were supposed to withhold taxes, as most tenants wouldn't, are there any supports available to you? What's your avenue here?
Well, of course, the law is clear. You're entitled to claim that from the landlord. But you can imagine if it's difficult for CRA to get money from someone who doesn't live in Canada, what's your luck going to be in pursuing that? So it's very clear that the tenant can set it off. The law is also very clear that if you deduct the 25% each month, the landlord has no recourse against you. So they can't throw you out or say you're not paying your rent. The law is very precise on that point. There's no action against the tenant who complies with this law. So, it's a real problem. And the truth is, it's not been enforced. I talked to one of the leading tax lawyers in Canada on this, and his firm had never, ever heard of a single case of this.
Really?
So this is remarkably unusual. It's certainly not something. If you look on, for example, the standard rental agreements across the country, Quebec, BC, Ontario, there's no place on the form that says, I am a tax resident of Canada. On every standard contract of purchase and sale, there's a place where the seller has to declare their tax residency. So it's a problem. And of course, the other main problem is it's very difficult to know. People don't even understand what a tax residency means.
Yeah.
It's very complicated. It does not mean, for example, that your landlord is merely, for example, right now, they're a snowbird in Arizona or Florida.
Yeah. That
doesn't make them a non-tax resident. So we're not talking about physical residency.
Yeah.
We're talking about tax residency. It's just very complicated. I don't think we're going to see a huge flood of this, but we do know that CRA, taking advantages of modern data and computers, and with some success, auditing sale transactions and reclaiming tens of millions of dollars to the taxpayer. So the challenge here, go ahead.
So I was going to say, Ron, we're almost out of time, but it's a confusing issue. At the bottom line, is this person on the hook for this amount of money, or can they just say to the CRA, this was not my responsibility?
Oh, this recent case makes it very clear, and the judge makes it clear. This is a harsh result, but it's the law and the very clear law.
Wow. Ron, thank you for that enlightening this morning.
Okay, thanks for calling.